But it's funny when, when I tell people that they don't read, it sounds wild. But yeah, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about it. There's been an article I just told you about the Chronicle of Higher Ed. There was an article in the New York Times. And I thought it was just me. Like I would come home, I'll talk to my wife, and she's just like, "Nah, you just sound like the get off my lawn, like older dude who is used to it being a certain way. We had 3.5-inch floppy disks when I was in college, blah, blah, blah." No, it's not that. They really aren't reading. I had a good conversation on the podcast with a colleague from Syracuse, Charisse Lepre, and she was just talking about how, yeah, like, and I took a lot from that conversation. She was saying that it's not that they have the ability to read. It's just literally they aren't from a generation where leisure time is spent reading things in long form. And so their practice of reading is literally like when I tell you ask when I'm asking for a quote, a key quote, they're able to take things in bites and chunks, but if I tell them to absorb an entire chapter, it becomes like I told them um to solve a Rubik's cube. It becomes but it's just has to do with the developmental stages that kids are going through, and this being like a point in our history where how knowledge is sought out, how it is produced. These kids are much better with video, right? So if I can assign like a video essay, and I have some students that'll kill that, right? But I have students who, if you ask them to write an 8 to 10 page paper, they will struggle.
Mm.
And so, I think, for folks from my generation, I think we have a bit of a cheat code because we know what it's like to not have these tools, but we know what it's like to also believe in these tools. And so we're attacking using things like ChatGPT or even some of these other AI tools with a different understanding on how to prompt it, a different understanding on even what to do with what we get from it, to still edit it, to still proofread it, to still we still have these hard skills that we developed. I still deal with actual textbooks, right? I had a final where I told them that it's, open book but no internet, but then everybody's book is on their laptop, so I have to then find an app that blocks them from being able to do certain, like it's just a different world,
Right,
right?
right.
So, you know, um, that you want to do the honor deal with an honors code, but I know that, students are going to try to backdoor their way to find information. We have very smartphones and increasingly dumber people. And
Yeah,
I just kind
right.
of,
For sure. It's funny. I mean, it's so funny how the nature of cheating has evolved, right? Because, you know, I mean, when we were in college, I'm sure it's the same now. But,
hmm
as you mentioned before, students they have high expectations. They have a lot of demands from a lot of different professors and a lot of different classes. And a lot of times they don't feel like they have as much time, especially when they want to have time to have fun too, right? And so,
hmm
me and my roommate Sean, shout out to Sean, man. We had an African literature class freshman year,
hmm
and we knew we were gonna have like every day we went to class, it was a round table discussion about whatever the text was, right? So we're reading
Right.
like Yoruba Girl Dancing or whatever, right? And so
hmm
so there was a couple times where we just didn't have enough time to get through what we needed to read. Like
hmm
we had to have the whole book read by a certain class. So
hmm
Sean read the first half of the book. I read the first half of the book. Sean read the second half of the book, and we're supposed to tell each other what happened.
hmm
It didn't go that well. It was enough to be passable, but
Yeah.
it was also enough to pump fake in class. You know what I mean? It's like because we could contextualize a quote. We could
Yes.
we could pull out something
Yes.
that would convince the teacher that we were talking about that
Right.
we had read the book, right? So we
Right.
had that. We didn't have COVID years. We had that, that those critical points in time where we could pull something out
Yep.
and contextualize it in class and do well enough, but we still had to we still had physical books in our hand.
Yeah.
Our professor didn't have to go and find an app to keep
Yes.
us from finding ways to take shortcuts.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more of, you know, there was more of a need to at least pump fake, as you said, right? There was
Right.
a more of a need to at least make it believable. I have students that come to me and they just say, "Hey, I didn't read this," or "We'll be in week 7. I don't have the book," or "It'll be in week 5. I'm sorry, Dr. Evans. I went to the tailgate. I didn't read it. Can you tell me?" Ultimately it becomes like in some ways customer service, because this is
Wow.
a business and they in many ways are taking in loans, paying tuition, and they're enrolling. And so we're tasked with doing a lot more than just educating. We have to prepare them to be educated. And I think that is much more of a heavier lift than it has been, maybe even, I would say, even from year 1 to year 2 to now. I've seen that lift need to be heavy, and I think it directly correlates to those who experienced those COVID years, and them being heavily reliant on digital tools, and they have more information at their fingertips than ever before. The depth of that information seeking is just not there. So
Mm.
they know a little bit about a lot.
And they
Like
feel
they
like
know
genius, and they feel like geniuses.
So they know a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
But then when it comes down to like the critical, the real critical aspects of talking about a subject, which is now what is needed to actually discern one student A from student B. Because if I got a 300-person class, all 300 of these kids are using Chat GPT and probably giving it the same prompt because they're still in the prompt from my syllabus and throwing it into Chat GPT. And if they're not like going back proofreading and going back changing some words, paraphrasing things that I was actually taught, things like, you know what I mean, like
Right.
plagiarizing is not new.
Right. It's not right. Right.
Shortcuts are not new. Cheating is not. None of this is new.
Right.
It's the ability to paraphrase, the ability to take, to actually have understanding of what you might be taking from. And so now, assignments, the difference between an A student and a B student for me is now like, okay, where's your original thought? Because now I know you can give me the basics of like, this is when Colin Kaepernick took a kneel. This is what it meant, blah, blah, blah. Like it can sound very generic because you could just throw it into a prompt and it'll spit you back out the same thing. And sometimes these students don't even know where the information came from that the learning model gave to them. By the way, we are talking to Justin Hunt. By the way, the phenomenal journalist. I would say to me, marketing guru as well as online media personality. Uh, Me and him go back a ways, but we also have so many things in common. So our conversation is going to be far more. Uh, it's like the formal informal, right? It's like you can pick up a lot of things that we put down while we're talking, but at the same token, you can also tell there's a level of familiarity here. Justin is a member of my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated,
Yo.
um, and we have a serious history in hip hop. And the thing that always interests me about your story, just speaking about college and all of that stuff, is like as much as folks like point to me as being like the smart person, I always admired those who did things that dealt with numbers, or I always admired folks who were able to navigate the politics of the campus. I don't know if I was always that great at doing that. I got pretty good grades at Penn, but in many ways, I told folks the hardest part about Penn was getting in, and then once I got there, I told myself like, as long as I graduate on time and I have something above a 3, I'm cool. um, but like I would see kids in Wharton who I felt like were smarter than me struggle mightily, with dealing with, I guess, the pressures of being in Wharton, the amount of work they were given, the competitive nature of finance. angling for internships, I guess pressure from parents, those types of things. But I saw some people really thrive in that setting, um, not just in class, but be involved in like a lot of different things on campus and be leaders in those spaces. And I feel like you're one of those individuals who did that. Um, and so the through line, I like to talk to my students about stuff not being linear in our profession anymore. Like, how do you go from this space of being, I want to say you were class president, right?
Yeah.
And then, I imagine an officer in the fraternity.
Yeah. 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 I
um,
was pole mark senior year.
you were pole marshal. That's it. For those
Right.
who don't know, that's president of
Right.
the chapter, right? And so you're doing that, but then you're carrying a pretty heavy load and going into finance
Mm.
and positioning yourself to kind of enter this very highly competitive career. How does that then translate to where you've gotten to now?
Thank you for the introduction too, by the way. It's really, I always think our backstory is really funny because I legitimately was a fan of Kids in the Hall and a fan of you lyrically. And
I appreciate that.
and then I found out you were a Noop, and I was like, oh, he's a Noop too. That's what's up. And then I was like, oh, he went to Penn. Oh, shoot, okay.
And now
My
there's
godbrother, my godbrother
yeah.
went to Penn, and then my godbrother Jamar. Shout out to Jamar. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Jamar Delani, and y'all are
Yeah.
chapter bros. But
Yeah.
so this the 6 degrees became 1 degree really quickly,
Yeah, he's
but
very sharp.
really sharp. And so he actually is a big influence on me just throughout my entire life. I think he's like three,
Okay.
4 years older than me. So like we ended up being into a lot of the same stuff, but he was always like the coolest person in the world to me, right?
Yeah.
So we both were into basketball, of course. Actually, I took a visit to Penn because our parents had season tickets or annual tickets to the Penn Relays. And
Oh
so
wow.
we would always go growing up all the time. But one year we went and he was at Penn. And so that was
That's
my
dope.
first time ever being around the Bros. And so that was really pivotal in me crossing the burning sand. So
Mm.
the and so but Jamar was always very analytical, and
Yeah.
he was just had a high processing of all kinds of different information, and our families really did too. His
Yeah.
dad and my dad were best friends. They went to Brooklyn Tech together. They're engineers,
Okay.
different. So I kind of came up in that type of environment.
Okay.
My mom was a teacher too, right? So I
Mm.
have two very analytical parents at home, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was always. And I was raised as an only child, so processing things was just became innate because it was just how our family communicated and
Okay.
all my friends' family communicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to Wofford, I get to Wofford, and I'm super active on campus. I was super active in high school, of course, as well,
Yeah.
just overall in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I go into investment banking. I work at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and then I
Mm-hmm.
leave to write about rap music. And the thing that was so similar between the two is one, by the time I get into music journalism, rap journalism,
Mm-hmm.
blogs were on the rise, right?
Yeah.
Blogs were rapidly supplanting print.
Yeah.
And the metrics for success in the blog era versus the print era are very different.
Yeah.
In terms like you're not dealing with circulation in the same way. You're dealing with page views now.
Yep.
And so there's a heavy analytical underbelly to everything that's happening in the blog space and everything that's happening online, right? So
Yeah.
there's pretty much a one-to-one connection there,
Yep.
right? And so a lot of the things I worked in financial institutions and then I went to global industrials, which is interesting because they have inverted balance sheets. But
Mm.
but the thing that is similar, regardless, in a layman sense, is everything you post online, in a sense, is an opportunity for future interest payments, right?
Mm.
Because once you create a cycle of quality content, people always want to go back and look at your previous content. And
Mm-hmm.
so they scale in a different way than what previous eras of journalism, print journalism, for example, or even broadcast TV journalism before the internet was able to do. Like if you liked an article from Greg Tate, you had to go find the previous edition of a
Yeah.
magazine, or you had to wait for him to drop a book.
Yeah.
I was always a big fan of Torre, and I would always get the source. I'd always get Double XL. I'd always get Vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always just get certain publications. But
Same here.
but others like Rolling Stone or Billboard, those are more contingent on who was on the cover
Yes.
for me personally, right? So
Hmm.
if Tupac's on the cover of Rolling Stone, I'm gonna get that Rolling Stone, right?
Yep.
But the next week is Bon Jovi, I'm probably not gonna get it. But if I'm going to, but if I go to, CVS, the drugstore, whatever, with my mom while she's doing
Hmm.
whatever she's doing, I'm in the magazine section,
It's the
and so
same
I'll
thing I was doing.
right. And so I'd pick up that Bon Jovi Rolling Stone and see what other little article might be in there, and that's where I would find like Torre, for example, or I might find
Yeah.
Kevin Powell, on an editorial or something like that. So I say all that to say again, by the time I get into the blog space, and I identified this before I sacrificed my career to write a
Mm.
product, write about a product people don't buy.
Yeah. Yeah.
we went from stealing music to renting it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
uh, I identified the similarities in that aspect of it, and that part of it, even blogging just on my own personal blog, I did find interesting, right?
Okay.
And then two, the other thing that's really critical in finance, is truthfully storytelling, right?
Mm.
You can take the comps, you can take, your market caps, you can take your trend lines, but can you tell a story that can allow you to win a client? Can you tell a
Hmm.
story that can allow you the opportunity to represent a company or to sell them different financial products in order for them to have a more successful future?
Hmm.
And so those two things are really similar, right?
Yeah.
You got an analytical background, an analytical underbelly,
Hmm.
right? It feels like interest in a way, right? And it's about storytelling.
Mm.
Now, what you need to understand is very different. Yeah, you need to understand certain comps of what's happening in certain industries or industry trends, that are happening in finance in a different way. That you need to understand something similar with, a more human focused
Yeah.
backstory in hip
Yep.
hop. But I feel like the transition sounds more stark or sounds
Hmm.
sounds more divergent when look at my resume or my LinkedIn or whatever,
For
as opposed
sure.
to how I ever felt about it. Like to me, these are two
Mm.
things that I've always been around my whole life anyway.
Yeah.
You know what
It's
I
an
mean?
interesting thing. I think one of the things that I took away, even just in looking in your bio, is that, I think we're of a cohort that also is establishing voice just on an everyday level through social media. And we kind of age with social media's ascendance. And so it doesn't matter if you're a dentist, it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, you might have an opinion on the Knicks, right? And you might decide to write about the Knicks every single week. And eventually you might have a following of people who are, and you're doing this work. It's what some folks in the academic space call the gift economy, like Wikipedia, just caring about things enough to publish about it. I think that's what the blog era was, where blogs were champion artists that they love, right? And just for the sake of like, I want everybody to know about Pac Div. I want everybody to know about Kids in the Hall, Cool Kids, Asher Roth, Kid Cudi, whoever it is, without the expectation of money at the beginning. At least there was a realization later on that the metrics could definitely equal out to ad revenue and things of that nature. But I think the reason I think the blog era was so special is because there were a lot of individuals who probably were told by their parents they had to enter one of three professions that use that intellect in their off time to still publish. And there's so many voices that came from that period. I'm wondering though, like, what was that moment for you where you're like, this is a real thing? Because I know for me, it was telling my mother I was going to the studio with Just Blaze, and I didn't even have a deal yet, and I didn't even have anything, but it was tangible to tell her that the person that I'm working with has won a Grammy, and that the person that I'm working with does the same thing that he's doing for me. He does that for Jay-Z.
Right.
And it was something my mom could tell her friend, like, okay, I don't even know what she said to them. She might have butchered the whole thing, but Jabari's working with Jay-Z. That's probably what she told him. But it made sense. It was like, oh, okay, he didn't just throw away his education to move to LA to pursue this thing that is not going anywhere. It was like, no, 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 it's real. He's now like amongst those who you see on television,
Mm.
and it feels like like this is where his life is taking him. Was there a moment where like you leave sort of the space of corporates, you know, banking and all of this stuff that you've done, and then you're like, okay, well, I now have found my lane with this other thing too, right? Or like, okay, the company man is real, or just even your voice as a journalist or as a presence, um, you could see kind of the light.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's probably similar to you too. Like for me personally, there was a number of different touch points I think that
Mm-hmm.
sort of help reinforce. I can get to things as small as I remember the first when I first left the bank, and I left in 2009.
Mm.
I negotiated a buyout because the global economy was collapsing. And so it was a good time. I was like, oh, I get a
Yeah.
cash influx right now. Let's
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right. But, one of so the first, I think that's May or June when I ended up leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole first 6 months was me working on my original blog, the-quotable.com. And by this point, I'd already, it's been a couple years since I felt like I could be competitive in the space. Now, my blog
Okay.
never blew up, right? I'll
Okay.
just be out there. It never blew up on its own.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the right place at the right time in the sense I lived in Brooklyn, New York. And I just started going outside. And
Mm.
so I started going over to any listening they had at Fat Beats. I'm over there going to Tony Touch every Tuesday on the
Mm-hmm.
Lower East Side. I'm going to anything that Brooklyn Bodega's doing, show and prove events, anything
Yeah.
that Jossie's doing, anything at Southpaw. And so I got a chance to actually meet a lot of independent artists. And
Mm.
through that process, I'm sitting in the back of nightclubs,
Yeah.
basically, writing, recording entire independent showcases or open mic nights. I would go to the New York and sit there and record. Like
That's crazy.
I have all these recordings still. I'm talking like,
That's
or
crazy.
going to EO Dub. Like I have full EO Dub
Uh-huh.
competitions. So point is, I was able to meet people and start connecting in my mind, like sort of the plot analysis of who's who and where's where and what's what and
Mm-hmm.
how these things intersect. And but I still wanted to. I again, like I said, I knew what I was writing. I was competitive. I knew
Mm-hmm.
as a writer as the primary product that you would find on most of the blogs, outside of just a
Mm-hmm.
post that would be like, oh, here's a new song.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the way that SK talked about stuff, or the way it
True.
was really the way that William Ketchum's talked about stuff, or the way that
Mm-hmm.
Mecca talked about stuff that I was really attracted to. And but I didn't have any relationships. I really needed to get
Mm.
relationships with people who had editorial organizations.
Okay.
I had a ton of by that point by the end of 2009 I pretty much had facial recognition and cell
Mm-hmm.
phone numbers for anybody who's throwing events,
Okay.
independent events. And so there was one day, it was actually a really important week. So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of December 2009, Brooklyn Bodega, at the point in time, they put on the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival, which was the
Yep.
largest hip hop festival in New York City for people who didn't know at that point in time. And they
Yeah.
also did smaller events called Show and Proves. And the
Yep.
Show and Proves was a competition for new artists to perform at the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival.
Yep.
And so they had one every quarter. And that whole first year, I would go to the Show and Prove, cover the whole Show and Prove,
Mm.
and then occasionally I get to interview some artists afterwards. I get to
Yep.
interview Brown Bag All Stars and Soul
Mm-hmm.
Con.
Mm-hmm.
Kosha Dills is one of the first people I met, and I think the entire
Wow.
hip hop community knows Kosha Dills because that dude
Yeah.
stays on his grind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, so I would cover all these events, and there's people like you know, those chosen performing. It's
Mm.
people like Homeboy Sandman would be the feature performer at that point in time. He had
He
just
went to Penn.
yeah, he went to Penn too. He's another one.
Yeah.
I had an editorial idea one time. I hadn't met you yet. I wanted to do a piece on you, Homeboy Sandman, and John Legend. So I was like, look at all these Penn artists. There's gotta
It's
be
an
something here.
interesting, yeah. It's definitely a little lineage of folks who, is a rapper by the name of Hoodie Allen.
Yeah, Hoodie Allen was there too.
When it's weird because at every point, I think each person from the different era tried to contact the person from the older era to like get advice,
Mhm.
just because of kind of what you hinted at, this idea that like, okay, I'm analytical, I'm strategic, I'm kind of intellectual or whatever. How did they go about entering this world? And how did they kind of go about kind of forming relationships and getting past certain stigmas that one faces from not just being seen as like a college kid, but just even being branded with like the Ivy League, PWI, whatever experience. It's like, oh, now you got to get past that other hurdle. In a world like hip hop, or even in black music or urban music more generally, that's not necessarily the badge of honor.
There definitely won't be a red carpet. No red carpet for
Nah,
you.
it doesn't mean as much as even saying like I went to Howard or I went to FAM or I went to Morehouse or whatever. Like in that aspect of the business, folks are more liable to recognize that than to say like, oh, you went to Penn or Harvard, why are you here? It's
Mm,
like that type of thing. Or you can be my accountant or you can manage my money, but you can't be, you could even be the manager, but like be the person out front. It's like, well,
right.
it didn't make sense. So no, for sure that like having
Yeah.
those relationships becomes critical to sort of figure out how you can make your lane in that space.
Yeah. So here's how I did it. So the last show Improve, because it was the fourth one for Brooklyn Bodega.
Mm.
Instead of covering the artist, I decided to cover Wes Jackson. And so Wes Jackson was the founder and CEO of Brooklyn Bodega.
Hmm.
And so I interviewed him. And my whole plan was he'd be so impressed in my knowledge of Brooklyn Bodega that he'd offer me an opportunity to write for brooklynbodega.com. And it
Wow.
worked. And it worked. And so right at like a month later, I got my first assignment. And 2 months after that, I became editor in chief. And
Mm.
so that's on a Thursday, let's say.
Mm.
That Saturday, there was a label that doesn't exist now called Vegas Records.
Oh
And
wow.
they were doing a talent search, a nationwide talent search in Newark, New Jersey. And so I mean, I'm talking like 50 of the most aggressively mediocre rappers you'd ever hear in your life showed up. And, but there was a panel of A&Rs and industry execs who were going to review their talent. And then there was Steve Ray's from All Hip Hop and Jake Payne from Hip Hop DX,
Yep.
right? And so I saw Jake Payne was there. DX is my all-time favorite blog, period. And
Mm.
I desperately wanted to meet him.
That's
And
cool.
so I remember it was a Saturday morning I woke up. And I'm coming off the high of getting the Brooklyn
The other
Bodega
thing,
Connect, right?
yeah.
And I almost didn't even want to get out of bed, you know what I mean? Because it was a blizzard outside. I'm
Oh
talking like
shoot.
7 inches of snow.
Oh
I'm in
shoot.
Brooklyn. I trekked across I trekked across 2 rivers and 3 trains, walked
Shit.
uphill in 6.5 inches of snow for 10 blocks to go to Vegas Record, paid $50 to get in to cover it. It wouldn't
Yeah.
let me just cover it. So I had to,
Wow.
the actual fee was 200. I
Oh
talked it down to
wow.
50 to cover it.
For the
I wait.
press pass.
You're right. I mean, I just showed up. I didn't even ask him. And
Yeah.
then I sat through like 13 hours of all these artists
Hmm.
just to meet Jake so I can interview Jake Payne, editor in chief of
Uh.
DX at the time. And
Uh.
my whole plan was that he would be so impressed with my knowledge of the organization that he would offer me the opportunity to freelance for DX. And that
That's
worked.
dope.
And so that was the first time where I felt like I had a place in the industry, in
Okay.
the rap journalism industry
Yeah.
because those two were so pivotal. Because after that, I ended up becoming editor chief of Brooklyn Bodega. I ended up hosting Brooklyn Bodega Radio. I ended up
Mm-hmm.
going from the back of these clubs, covering things, to hosting events. And then DX was the largest publication, most read publication at that time.
Sure
So that was
was.
the first time people really got a chance to see me flex my pen in
Mm.
volume, like in front of millions of people, millions of readers. And that was critical to me becoming editor in chief of Hip Hop DX, which is how I moved to
Dope.
New York City or to LA 3 years later. So, but I attribute that week as probably the most pivotal one. I'm like, oh shoot, okay, I put together a plan to go talk to these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that I wanted out of that plan worked. And so I was prepared for the moment, and it really opened up my entire all the opportunities my entire career opened up that week.
A lot of my students talk about wanting to have a voice that is independent and that they want to maintain their independence. But I think there's still a need to stress that even in working amongst organizations that aren't like completely corporate, that there still sometimes needs to be that breeding ground or that organization or that brand that sort of supports the beginnings of the work for a writer, a journalist, a personality, or just a media person more generally to find their way in this thing, especially in hip hop. I think that sometimes just having a space, um, and making the most of that space in whatever way that is. I was talking to a friend of mine about like what leaders was a sneaker boutique in Chicago, what leaders just meant to the hip hop community of Chicago, where you have someone like Joe Freshgoods who was literally the cashier when you went in there, but then you realize like eventually he starts putting his shirts and things in there on consignment with the through the owner of the store, Corey. But then you also would have like an opportunity, you're shopping there, and it's just kids freestyling over beats in the corner, and it'd be kids like Joey Perp and Vic Mensa and Chance the Rapper, and they're like, "Well, look, I'll give you a free mixtape," just for being at leaders, and sometimes just having community, having an umbrella is necessary, even when this pathway isn't linear, and maybe there's this thought that like I'm on my own. Having a space that's dedicated to sort of honing whatever it is that you're trying to make happen, and having an audience for that is very critical from getting to one stage to the next. But I'm wondering, as the blog era like fades and like as platforms and influencers, quote unquote, become more prominent in sort of discourse, where along the lines did you sort of see yourself sort of kind of making a shift from not just being like a journalist and a writer to, I guess, in some ways being a content creator? And I would say, has that changed the way you approach your voice?
I mean, it's I think I've been in places with the right resources at the right time.
Okay.
And so, at Brooklyn Bodega, they had Brooklyn Bodega Radio, and Wes Jackson used to host. He was the original host.
Mm-hmm.
And but when the festival was coming around, everyone got too busy, right? He got too busy
Wow.
to host the show, so they asked me if I could host the show every Friday.
Mm.
So I ended up. This was on PNCRadio.fm, which was online radio, which was fairly nascent. You had a few other online radio stations in New York City that were, pretty had fairly sized audiences for where online radio was at that point in time, which was almost no place. I mean, we're talking before. I don't even know if satellite radio was called Sirius yet. I'm not even sure.
Mm.
So we're talking a long time ago. But through that experience, I'm now hosting a 4-hour radio show
Wow.
every Friday. Right now, it's
Mm.
online radio. We had 12 viewers. But
Yeah.
that's a lot of reps, right?
Yeah.
And PNC itself was its own little community because you had Two Dope Boys had Mecca from Two Dope Boys had a show
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Combat Jack started his empire there.
Wow.
So he was like he and I started almost around the same time, so I was able to build a relationship with them. There was a lot of different people, and
Yeah.
so those were reps that I didn't know that I would actually need, and were never
Mm.
part of the game plan.
Mm.
And so by the time I take over DX, we spent a month putting together the entire content strategy before we announced it to the team. DX had just opened an office in New York, in LA.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me. So DX was for the first time was going from a model where all the writers were in different cities
Mm-hmm.
to, okay, well, now everybody's in person, and now DX becomes real people. Because
Yeah.
one of the things with the blog era is you didn't see anybody, you just saw
Yeah.
the blog itself. Most of
Yep.
the people didn't have offices. So we became real people. And so we we sat around for a month putting together this very detailed content strategy. We roll it out for the staff of what it's going to look like when I'm announced as editor in chief.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to dinner with DJ Vlad that night. And we're talking, it's got to be February 2013. We
Mm-hmm.
go to dinner with DJ Vlad that night. And Vlad is talking to us about all the money he's making in YouTube. Because YouTube had just started
Yeah.
monetization not too long,
Yeah.
not too long before that. And so we leave that meeting, and the owner of DX is like, Justin, you got to figure out YouTube, right?
Mm.
So we didn't have resources to hire someone else. You know, editor in chief doesn't necessarily, I wasn't necessarily running any. We had editors for each section, but now we have a new
Right.
section. So I became the person to run that section. So I ended up using interns to figure out video because I had no idea. And we had a CEO, Michael Hogan Miller, who had some television experience, so he would
Hmm.
help guide me into what content is, truthfully.
That's real.
But we were able to create a show called The Breakdown through a process of trial and error,
Hmm.
which was the first large video essay platform in hip hop. Period. Right. So you know,
Mm.
you go to YouTube, you see all these video essays on hip hop.
Yep.
We were the first
Yep.
ones to do it, and so. Um, but through that experience, right? So now I was doing online radio every Friday.
Hmm.
PNC actually offered me my own show, so I got the Company Man show on PNC. So now I'm on air 5 days a week for two
Wow.
years, right? I shift over. We have to figure out YouTube. The mantra was short content at that point in time.
Hmm.
I felt like we could do longer conversations because I wanted to do stuff like Rachel Maddow's A Block. I was like, there needs to be a
Wow.
Rachel Maddow A Block in hip hop. We just need to figure this out. And you know, the publication was really against it. But when the
Hmm.
numbers started coming in, they were like, "Yeah, keep doing it." You know what I mean? Because people, my whole thing was, I go to the gym and I see people on the treadmill watching Netflix on their phone.
That is
If
real.
it if it's dope, people will watch it. And so that point is where I started really feeling the shift at first.
Okay.
One, because I was literally tasked with figuring out video, that
Hmm.
took away from the amount I was writing on the platform.
Hmm.
But everything I was doing was still scripted. So I was still scripting, I
Yep.
was still writing, but I was writing for a different medium. And so
Hmm.
when you're writing, so that's where I started to learn how to write for video as opposed to write for editorial, write to be read, and
Yeah.
how to use my voice
Mm.
inflection, facial expressions, pacing,
Mm.
pausing. You know, some tools that I started developing when I was doing online radio with 112 people, because
Right.
we got to the point we got to 300 people. Hey, that was a lot, right?
It
And
is something for
it
that
is
time, for that era,
right,
for sure.
yeah. But then and at that point, the industry was vastly changing,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that killed the blog era was YouTube, SoundCloud,
Hmm.
Spotify, Apple Music,
Hmm.
and truthfully record labels because they started DMCAing anybody who was hosting songs. so
Mm.
so you have you know a decade and a half of everybody's back catalog that the labels were like, take that down, take that down, take that down,
Yep.
take that down. We own this, we own this. I mean, this is what they do with YouTube copyrights now, but this is the first version of that, right? And
Yeah.
but what happened was we were able to grow the business despite those macro challenges because YouTube became
Mm.
a new revenue stream because we were tapping into a new audience with a new product that no
Mm.
one else had at that point in time.
Mm.
And we found that audiences really like to engage with people. Like they started to
Yeah.
talk to us like they knew me. You know what I'm saying? Which was a different type of interaction in a
Yep.
comment section from an article, right?
Mm.
The comment section from an article, away from just trolls, the comments tend to be almost exclusively about whatever you're talking about, whether that's
Mm.
positive or negative or bring in other facts. But when we started doing the videos, people were commenting on my shirt. People are commenting on how come Justin always wipes his nose like that. You know, they start saying all kinds of things, and so that's when sort of the influencer feel started to come in. I never
Hmm.
felt like a personality before, but my
Okay.
personality was something that the audience was also reacting to, and not just mine. We had a number of people on the staff
Yeah.
host different things, but that's when that started to happen.
Hmm.
And then from the revenue side of things, now you've got advertisers or sponsors who want to give you a shirt to wear while you're talking, or
Mm.
who want to, part of their ad package is for you to do ad reads in a different kind of way, as
Yep.
opposed to just embeds or interstitials, suitcases on a website, right? And so
Hmm.
we're talking 2013, 14, 15, where all
Yep.
those things really start coming together in in that context. And so for me personally, those ended up being very pivotal for my broader reputation, but also for my career trajectory,
Okay.
because the popularity of what we were doing on YouTube, my history backstory in the Brooklyn community, including hosting shows, including hosting radio shows, along with writing and being an editor,
Hmm.
And the YouTube side of that and the online radio side of that became steroids to my brand. At that
Mm.
point, I became more than just a byline. I
Mm.
became someone, a face, a knowledgeable, reputable voice that can speak with responsibility about this culture.
Mm.
And that opened a whole series, another series of doors, including me working at Empire at a record label for similar reasons. You
Yeah.
know, for me writing for television, I ended up
Mm.
writing for Court Cam on A&E. I did 3 seasons of
Wow.
Court Cam, which is outrageous moments captured in the courtroom. Yeah, that's what the tagline is. But because I'd been writing the breakdown, it's the same thing, right? And
Wow.
so the writing has never left,
Mm-hmm.
but the nature of the writing and where it was presented offered more opportunities that people would define as an influencer. It's what you see
Mm.
with UGC content now.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are generally scripting what they're going to say.
For sure.
The majority of it, right? They might
Yeah.
find a way to deliver it like it's natural, but
Yes.
they're not going in there freestyling. And so
No.
that was like the nascent era of a lot of those things. And now I'll do a lot of reactionary stuff on my channel, reactionary news, reacting to music videos on my channel now, along with scripted things,
Mm-hmm.
along with interviews, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons I'm even spending as much time on that is because it really is a different type of art form, a different type of angle approach that has a massive audience that I need to get better at because
Mm.
that's the part of the journey. In the beginning, I just wanted to be the best album reviewer of all time when I'm writing for my own blog. You know, then I want to
Right.
be the best rap journalist of all time when I'm running DX. You know, I want
Yeah.
to write breakdowns. I want to do big think pieces. Well, there's also
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to get better at being simpler, or you have to
Yeah.
get better at interacting with the audience in the ways that they want to interact with their content and their topics, because that's always evolving. And we started
Mm-hmm.
with this talking about the difference between print magazine and the blog era and how the
Right.
metrics shifted a little bit. Well, there's a number of people who are just now really going in on the digital side for the first time, who are
Yeah.
gods I looked up to for years. I mean, Elliot
Mm-hmm.
Wilson, you know, he's at Hip Hop DX. He does the bigger picture now. He was
Mm-hmm.
the editor in chief of Double XL, the mind
Mm-hmm.
behind the freshman list. He did
Yep.
Rap Radar podcast. He
Yep.
was talking earlier this year and he said, you know, this is the first time that he's ever done a show that didn't have guests.
Mm.
It's fascinating to me to hear that. You know,
Yeah.
Torre's one of my biggest idols and inspirations. If there's a Mount Rushmore of rap journalist, Torre's on it for
Oh
me.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I've been benchmarking him my entire career. And now he started Rap Latte, and now he's really trying to figure out his YouTube game. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like the ways people want to interact with information will always evolve, but having the right skill set to be able to adjust to those is critical. And I personally think that skill set is the ability to communicate, the ability to process information, and
Mm-hmm.
the ability to connect with an audience. So
Mm-hmm.
I think all those things really started coming together when we started YouTube at Hip Hop DX, and now all of it's very reflexive for me.
That's dope. I mean, I'm thinking about my students now. Many of them, while they use YouTube, they are stuck on TikTok right now as like the main platform that they want to attack. Um, we're seeing kind of a tenuous relationship between TikTok and our country and kind of the I guess the future of this platform seems in some ways in the balance. But what are some differences in the blog era versus YouTube versus now what TikTok is doing? Do you think it's sort of changed, I guess, the monetization? Has it changed the way people talk about things? We just, I was mentioning how, kind of short form video, it's become even shorter, right? The what is sort of necessary to sort of catch the audience. Uh, have you seen there be a difference in shift in the last maybe I don't know 3 to 5 years of kind of the ways in which people have approached even what you do?
I think, from my point of view, every new platform, the arc of every new platform
Mm-hmm.
trends in the same direction.
Mm,
YouTube wouldn't let you put over 5 minute videos at one point. Then they
right.
wouldn't let you put over 10 minute videos at some point. Now
Mm-hmm.
you can get full 10-hour documentaries on that mug.
Yeah.
You had Vine that was like 1 minute. Instagram smashed it with 1 minute. Then they went
Yeah.
to 90 seconds. Now you can do extended things. TikTok, the same thing. I watched a 45-minute brilliant vertical video TikTok breakdown of Kendrick versus Drake,
Mm.
and so the shift that I see tend to be more with the functionality and the capabilities of the platforms rather
Mm-hmm.
than whether or not rather than what they necessarily allow you to do or the arc of what they allow you to do from a content standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, every platform wants to have longer content because it's more ad friendly.
Yeah.
If an advertiser can keep you on something longer, they want you to be there.
Mm.
Now, how they get you to interact with the platform, generally speaking, it's shorter content that'll get people to you faster, which is, and then also as you grow your business on the tech side, server
Right.
space and things like that. And so when I look at TikTok, the thing that differs for me, or the thing that I think where TikTok really made its mark is one, the technology is just way better. The
Yeah.
algorithm was more effective. The editing that they allow you to do within that platform, they
Mm-hmm.
brought all that to the space. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't allowing you to have a whole studio sitting up in this app. And
Mm-hmm.
two, I think they had a really great foundation because I think it was called Musically before it was TikTok,
Yeah.
and they were specializing in like voiceover stuff.
Yep.
People sort of meme voiceover things, which was
Mm-hmm.
either songs or scenes from movies or whatever. And that is the type of short form content that can be very addictive just right off the gate. And it was very difficult for the platforms to even really do that. But if you watch TikTok now, you're getting longer TikToks.
You are.
The TikToks are getting longer, guys.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know, but and outside of that, it's really the platform itself that really changes it.
Mm.
Because watching their algorithms better, they feed things to you faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if the For You page is it's, for me at least, whenever I go to my For You page, it's stuff that I'm actually more interested in than what I
Mm.
find in YouTube or what I might find on Instagram. Like it's stuff that I would I'm interested in, but didn't know I was interested in.
Right.
Right. Like if I watched that video of homegirl in, I don't know, New Zealand, I can't think of her name, when she was in their Congress and they didn't like the bill that was passed, and she pulled out that Haka war cry and tore the bill up in front of everybody. I watched that because I like that kind of stuff. So I watched that, and it took me to like 7 other joints that I didn't even know they're going on with the same type of energy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger difference, but everybody's trying to get longer. And
Yeah.
TikTok is longer now. I mean,
Mm.
especially the cross pollination between different platforms
Right.
because, I mean, look at Twitter, for example. I think Twitter was one of the ones that's probably the first on the short side of things because they only
Mm-hmm.
gave you 140 characters.
Yep.
Then they gave you 230 characters or whatever, 280
Mm-hmm.
characters. Then they gave you a 1 minute video. Now you
Yeah.
can go watch a whole bootleg version of the Knicks versus the Pacers last night. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can watch the Peach Bowl on
Yeah.
TikTok, on Twitter if you want to. So I think that's where I personally see the difference because the arc of these
Okay.
things continues in the same direction. I mean, even if you go back to like AIM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instant Messenger,
Yep.
right? Instant Messenger is just a little pop-up box. And then you get to Friendster. Then you get to Black Planet. Shout out to Black
Mm.
Planet. That was a
Oh
great
yeah.
one. Then you get to MySpace, and then now you're at Facebook and it brings everything together. So
Yeah.
things start off bite-sized, they get much bigger. Something new comes around. It starts off bite-sized in a more interesting way. Then they get
Mm-hmm.
bigger. Something new comes along. It starts off bite-sized, more interesting way. It gets bigger. The difference to me is the capabilities, the algorithm, the coding, and the features that each platform adds to itself. And I think we're currently in that moment right now with TikTok. People,
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, what's the name of this company? I can't think of this company. Shout out to Jessica Rue. She was fantastic filmmaker, video producer. She was showing me, I can't think of this app, but there's a vertical video app that shows full movies in 90-second clips, shot like movies,
Huh.
scripted. Like just go to picture of a film set,
Yeah.
picture them making the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Picture Final Destination, whatever it is, but they're shooting it vertically, and when they release it, they're only releasing it in 90-second clips, right?
Wow.
And so you get the first 6 or 7 by yourself for free, and then you use credits to unlock the next episode,
Huh.
right? So that is short form. That's going to turn longer as that platform continues to go. But it's a new model on how people are doing things right now.
It's like busting things down. I mean, clearly, I'm on YouTube quite a bit, but then I'm talking to my son who is 17, and begin to realize that a lot of the things that I'm seeing on YouTube are just
TikToks.
yeah busted down clips from
Hmm.
TikTok or like bits and pieces of a Twitch stream or
Yeah.
something like that. Where I for research purposes, I've been doing a lot more. Um, I guess watching in my spare time of like people like Blackboy Max and Cassinet and just trying to understand the appeal that they have. Even I Show Speed or some of these different personalities that really have created their own ecosystems. But then seeing how they can take one streamathon and turn it into hundreds of pieces of content that it's just floating itself in between. From a music standpoint, even since we're having a conversation a lot about hip hop, I've had conversations lately about La Russell in that way, where I'm like, I feel like he's someone who's figured out how to crack this new code of independence, not just from a standpoint of not being on a label, but really understanding that hey, I can build an ecosystem digitally in which I'm, for lack of better terms, a creator the same way everybody else is, and so that's the business model I can still abide by, and that allows for me to do the things that I want to do musically. Um, but I have a lot of students who really don't understand the amount of work that goes into this, and so without giving away all of the sauce, what does like a typical workday even look like for you? Um, or
Well,
work week even in terms of how you release things,
mm,
how much you release, what does that look like?
well, you know, for me, it's a little bit a mix of everything I've kind of done, I would say.
Okay.
I'll still do certain freelance stories for certain publications if I have an idea. So that'll happen a couple of times a year, not nearly as much as it used to. But
Mhm.
I have an editorial calendar, and I have different products that I offer on my channel, right? So
Mhm.
there's the feature interview, which is people who come by my studio, they sit on the couch, we have a long form deep dive conversation. Ray Vaughn
Mhm.
just came by last week, and we came by 2 days before
That's dope. For
Joey
the
Badass's joint drive before all that stuff blew up. So
yeah.
that is what I consider a feature product, right? It's
Mhm.
a long form exclusive piece of content,
Mhm.
in depth interview that can be chopped up a million different ways. Then I'll do things like then I'll have like online interviews, which are things that we're talking about here.
Sure.
And so those are a little bit lower
Mhm.
from a user experience standpoint, since we're not in the
Mhm.
same room. But
Mhm.
so it's interview conversations.
Yep.
Then I have a panel show that I created called Culture United, where I bring on different
Mhm.
voices from around, whether it's artists, whether it's actors,
Mhm.
YouTubers, seasoned journalists, just a plethora of different people. We usually have 6 to 8 people
Mhm.
on at a time. So Screwface John has been on, and Anthony Fantano, FD Signifier, Professor
Dope.
Sky, Curtis King, Omar Dorsey, the actor,
Mm.
DJ Head, Gina Views, chilling with Moni.
That's
Like
dope.
it's a revolving
Mhm.
cast. So there's like a bunch of different people, and we talk about the biggest topics in hip hop in just one massive online panel discussion, sort of light debate show,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
that's a separate product. And so I schedule those monthly, usually,
Okay.
but monthly to bi-monthly.
Mhm.
Then daily, I'll have sort of a reactionary news that I'll do, right? So
Okay.
that's to keep up with the trending topics. And the reason I do it that way
Mhm.
is not necessarily because it's advantageous from a views standpoint and algorithm standpoint. There can be some debate about that. But
Mhm.
within our ecosystem, it's important for me to do that
Right.
because I become more regular to people who are looking for hip hop on YouTube. And so that's been the most
Mm.
successful one
Mm.
because that's the one that leads more directly to ad revenue, sponsorship, partnerships with labels, partnerships with the Grammys and things like that because the
Okay.
familiarity is there. And then I
Mhm.
still do deep dive breakdowns where they're scripted pieces that look at life through the lens of hip hop. And
Okay.
so if you really look at it, that's 5 primary products that I have on that I offer on the channel,
Yeah.
and I have an editorial calendar that lays those things out to help keep me on schedule. And so now, if some things happen, some things change. We
Right.
just had we had a rap Royal Rumble last week. Things
Yeah.
changed. You know,
It
Kendrick versus
did.
Drake is blowing up.
Yeah.
Things change.
We're
You
gonna
know,
go there. Yeah.
right? Oh, are we talking about lawsuits now? I guess things change, right? So, but that's the schedule I try to keep myself on, and I'm posting anywhere between 1 to 3 videos a day.
Okay.
Every day you're going to get something.
Okay.
Depending on the day, you might get more than one thing.
Hmm.
But the real emphasis, more than anything else, is on the scripted pieces, the feature interviews, and the panel discussions.
That's dope. That's dope. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit because I have two questions left really. Um, but one thing I wanted to ask you is just about hip hop more generally and maybe the love that you have for it and how maybe that's changed over time, right? I've heard you talk somewhat in this interview, but just other in other venues about like this love for this culture that you had, no matter what it was that you were doing professionally, you always spent your spare time focused on what was going on in the culture, staying involved in what was going on in the culture. And I think, at least for me, what drew me to hip hop at the beginning was sort of, I don't want to call it the danger, but there was this idea that it was different than what everybody else was doing. And now we're at a space and time where I think a lot of people look at hip hop as being, very squarely centered in popular culture, very squarely centered in um, the lexicon of what everybody has an understanding of to a certain degree, and maybe isn't as underground as it was before. And with that, there's been shifts and changes in style, shifts and changes in just youth culture, right? If hip hop is driven by the youth, then the youth of this era is vastly different than the youth of past eras. Um, how has your love for hip hop evolved over this period of time?
It's unwavered. You know, I don't. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, whether I don't even know if it's evolved. It's just so innate to me. You know,
Okay.
it's like I don't have any kids, but I imagine if you have kids, maybe you know, I guess maybe your love for them evolves in a way, perhaps, but you just love them all the time. So,
Definitely
you know,
has to. Bun B used to tell me,
mm.
when I would run into him, and this is when I was very young, and at least from hip hop standpoint. When I first met him at South by Southwest, he was talking about getting on our song. We had a song called "Driving Down the Block" that he emailed us and asked for the instrumental, and I was so like, "Where did this come from?" Like, I don't know. I've never met Bun B in my life to the point where I thought the email was fake. We had to like do some due diligence. We found out it really was him sending an email from his personal account saying he just wanted the instrumental and he wanted to give us a verse for free just because he wanted to be on the song. And when I met him for the first time in person at South by Southwest, I asked him like, what made you want to do that? But then I also realized that he did the same thing with like the Cool Kids. He did the same thing with like maybe 3 or 4 other artists. And he was talking about how you reinvent yourself every 5 to 7 years if you're going to stay in this thing. And he was like, that reinvention doesn't necessarily come along with like forcing something. It's just putting yourself in a position of learning about what's going on and then picking and choosing what about what's going on do you want to involve yourself in. And so I guess from a rap standpoint, that made sense to me, which is like I like the energy of this young person. I want to attach myself to that young energy and see what it is that they're doing in ways that can inspire me. I'm wondering how that plays along on your side of the fence in terms of creating content or writing or
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's probably the reactionary news stuff, you know,
okay.
sort of the Twitch style video reaction things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it as too far away from hosting a radio show. You know
It's
what I
really
mean?
not, I guess.
Right. I don't look
Yeah.
at it, I mean, I look at it as being able to, break structure however you want to.
Right.
But for me, that's the newest way. that I'm experimenting with, interacting with my audience. I was very reluctant to do that
Mm.
for years, because I am way more comfortable. I've had a fear of public speaking my entire life,
Interesting.
which is why I do public speaking, because I don't like being scared of things. So when I'm
Mm.
scared of stuff, I've triggered, I've gone through a long process of personal development to where I'm reflexively triggered to think about those things being good for me. Like,
Mm.
oh, I'm scared of this. I must got to do it.
Yeah.
There must be something amazing on the other side of this fear right now.
Mm.
And but I also got very comfortable doing scripted things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're scripting a video or you're writing an editorial, you can be very particular, very careful with your words.
Yeah.
You can elongate an idea, you know, as eloquently as possible. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can take people on journeys in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
But when you're just kind of off the cuff and you don't know what's going to come out,
Yeah.
if something comes out wrong, you know what I mean? Like that's where you really, in my opinion, you know, that's another way where I found out how engaging I can actually be.
Mm.
Because, you know, if you need a guest for your show, you don't have a show, right? And so
Yeah.
for me, that's, you know, that is this latest evolution that I'm at when it comes to these kind of things, right?
That's dope.
You know, so I've been leaning into it this past year more than I ever have.
Mm.
But you know, overall, my relationship with hip hop overall hasn't changed, because that's always something that's at the core of hip hop anyway. You know, something
Yeah.
new, something fresh, something different. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Shout out Lupe Fiasco, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's always that's innate at the core of hip hop. Now, what I think is interesting is how much bigger rap music has gotten than hip hop.
Mm.
Rap
Yeah.
is way
Yeah.
bigger than hip hop.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
could be out here rapping and hate hip hop, and
Yep.
you could diss hip hop. You could talk about how hip hop is whack and
Yeah.
still sell your raps, and
Yeah.
nobody cares. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? You can ignore entire things at the foundation of hip hop,
Yep.
ignore them completely,
Yep.
disrespect them, and still be considered a great rapper. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Rap is way bigger.
Yeah.
And so I think my point of view on that would be look at perhaps where my criticisms as to where rap has gone at various points in time. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily from what's coming out of people who are making rap music, but to a degree, the control or the copycat nature of the
Mm.
industry that surrounds us all. I've had to
Mm-hmm.
get this past week, I've had to get more comfortable with how far away I am from Generation Alpha. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Generation Alpha is 15 years old, so they're actually participating in a lot of the things
Mm-hmm.
that are going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and I'm watching this Joey Badass versus Ray Vaughn and Daylight and all this stuff that's been happening. And I'm watching a lot of online discussions, and people are like, "This is a fake rap beef," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, I'm like, this isn't a rap. This is a rap battle.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a rap battle is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, not every rap battle turns into rap beef, you know, but there's literally a generation and a half that doesn't have that same interaction with
Correct.
where the industry has been. You know, there's a
Correct.
generation and a half that doesn't have very popular radio successful storytelling songs.
Mm.
Like, they don't have like Troy. They don't necessarily come
No.
up with Going Back to Cali, LL Cool
Mm-mm.
J's version. You know, the closest they got was, you know, Took Her to the O with King Von, you know.
Yeah.
And so you start looking, and so you know, and the fact that I see Denial is a River as successful as it is like a throwback in a positive sense. She's
Yeah.
basically rapping like MC Light,
Yeah.
telling
Yeah.
a story that's set in a 90s sitcom, right? And so, you know, I think my relationship or my opinions on what's happening with rap continues to evolve, because which makes me feel like what me and my peers do still has more value than perhaps people thought when they thought that hip hop was always going to be a young person's game. We're
Right.
past that. In my opinion, we're past that.
Yeah.
We're way past that. You
I
know,
agree with
like
that.
we have people there's boomers who are still alive who created hip hop. There's Gen Z or Gen X. There's to your point, that's how mainstream it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so there's room for all kinds of things to be successful and
Yeah.
for conversations to be driven around
Yeah.
this topic, because we're all old enough to experience it. And so, you know, I was getting comfortable with how far away I am from Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
Watching, people say this is a fake rap beef because they don't really hate each other, and not necessarily understanding the context of a rap battle, which means you don't
Mm.
necessarily understand the context of what competition has looks like in hip hop, away from the big tragedies that we talk
Yeah.
about, or the big
Yeah.
battles that also had some street elements to them, which means that there's still a whole lot of education that there's an opportunity for. And one of the
True.
things me and my mentor always, we have a perpetual discussion we come back to, and we debate this topic, and and it shifts all the time between him and I.
Mm-hmm.
But right where we are with this right now is probably the thing that you mentioned, that if hip hop felt dangerous, as part
Yeah.
of what attracted you to it. And for me, what attracted me to it was competition, right?
Mm.
And so me and my mentor, we talk about this, and it's like, the rap battle is the best thing hip hop has to offer,
Mm.
because it is completely unique to any other genre, and it's at
Yes.
the foundation of every element of hip hop, whether you're
Yeah.
DJing, breakdancing, graffiti, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Competition is there, and it's been what has propelled this culture globally to heights that people never thought it could reach.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the rap beef is the worst thing hip hop has to offer, because the rap beef leads to death, destruction, it leads to marginalized communities, it leads to all the things that plague us as people, just generally speaking. And that's a
Yeah.
very thin line. It's a
It is.
very thin line.
It
And the
is.
distinction between that line hasn't been talked about for so long, or we have a generation and a half that's seen, King Von and NBA Youngboy, or seen,
Right.
Young Dolph, what happened to Dolph, or you see
Mm-hmm.
all the problems of rap beef
Mm-hmm.
that they don't, and yet they don't have an understanding or an experience of the rap battle. And there's nothing more beautiful than, in my opinion, what innate competition,
Mm-hmm.
friendly competition to get away from certain nefarious elements in society,
Mm-hmm.
like sports, like video games,
Yeah.
like hip hop, the beauty that can offer,
Mm.
as long as we stay conscious of what happens when we go too far.
Yeah.
So, I think that's where I am with my evolution of hip hop and rap music.
That's dope. That's dope. I got one last question before I let you get out of here. I've been asking a lot of people that I talk to just about, media consumption in their everyday lives away from their work. I guess in the context of this conversation, it would be, an artist or maybe someone who's a voice in hip hop culture that brings you joy at this moment. Um, that maybe someone hasn't heard of, a newer artist, a newer voice, a newer beat maker. Um, yeah, any person that's just in the culture that's producing something that you consume just in your spare time that gives you joy. And it can be a guilty pleasure. I've had people talk about, like, Charleston White as
Right.
being like a guilty pleasure, that they, will watch his videos just randomly and just laugh or whatever. But I've had people talk about different artists that maybe are on the verge, or different producers that are on the verge. Um, I guess in the context of this, just keeping it to the culture, what is something within the culture that's bringing you joy that you sort of are consuming right now?
Osmond Benjamin. I'm a big fan of Osmond Benjamin.
Word,
Yeah, you fan?
word.
You like Osmond? You rock with him?
I'm, Double O kind of. I still kind of find out about things through Double
Yeah.
O,
Right. Right.
and he's like, I mean, even in terms of the arc of your career, I remember Double O was the one. You really need to talk more to just, like, he's still like my he's a great compass for me in regards to that. But to your point, yes, I
Yeah.
fucks with it.
Osmond Benjamin
Um,
is such a great balance between R&B and hip hop, and he's effortless in between them. He's got imagination. He's been
mm,
working for a while, and I feel like more people should talk about him. So people should give Osmond Benjamin a listen. Um, I also I've been watching a lot of this is gonna sound crazy, but I've been watching a lot of FAFO content on YouTube. The F
Mm.
around and find out content. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually pretty. Those clips, like the people who are putting those clips together, and the thing that I think what I think is so captivating about it is watching micro YouTube industries pop up around certain topics. And so
Mm.
the FAFO content, pretty much all my FAFO content creators on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
are aggregators from Africa, right?
Oh.
So there's Motif, there's there's Sin, there's at least 15 or 16 different African F around find out content creators. And what they're doing is taking TikToks of whatever the topic is of the day and they're putting them
Uh-huh.
all together in one place. But they're all in Africa, at least the ones I'm watching. Now there's other people.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there's some that try to add their own commentary on it. I don't want their commentary. I just want to get their aggregation. But
Fair.
then the ones that are my favorites are the ones that don't even try it. Like Motif will sit there with his phone, like the videos are playing, and Motif's just down here looking at his phone, not even paying attention. And so that sparked this idea. I was like, yo, this must be a very valuable industry to get into in
Yeah.
Africa, right? If their CPMS are anything close to mine, but their
Huh.
cost of living is 80%, 90% lower,
Yeah.
and they're engaging in the same content people are doing over here, it's crazy to me. It's just like it's opening new thoughts. And then I started thinking about
Mm.
like, okay, so why do some of them bother talking? Like, are they talking to us? Or is there this much interest in African audiences about what is happening here in America?
Interesting.
So are they explaining it to them? Or are they talking to us? Because they're talking to us. We
Mm.
don't care about your perspective on it. I
Yeah.
appreciate your aggregation. But the point is like I really like critical thought, critical thinking, you know, layered analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and landing on, you know, the best idea is something that's always been at the core of who I am because of my parents,
That's real.
because of their friends, because of Jamar's parents, because of people
Mm-hmm.
I've been around, which is what attracted me to
Mm-hmm.
finance, what attracts me to hip hop at the same time, that competitive aspect of it. And
Mm-hmm.
that faithful content industry over there, like I'm watching it, I have a million different thoughts. And you know, so I would say Oswald Benjamin and African faithful content creators
Wow.
bring me joy right now.
I love the diversity in that answer. Oh man, it's been great, bro. I appreciate you, man. I thank you for your time. I mean, this is one of those conversations where, as much as I want the audience and the listeners to, take something away, I feel like I always take something away when we have conversations. So, again, I thank you for even some of the advice you've given me as I've started to sort of branch out from just staying in this academic hole and sort of like doing things that are more public facing and just lending my voice in ways that aren't a rap verse.
Yeah,
And so I thank you, man, for your time. And I look forward to talking to you again real soon, man.
yeah, definitely. Anytime fine, man. I got to say, you know, it's for me personally, it really is inspiring, one, but it's also extremely impressive to me because I first heard you on School Was My Hustle,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
We coming up on
And
an anniversary with that next
right.
year.
And you've dedicated your life to academia. And
Yeah,
so the hustle continues and you continue to open minds and inspire the next generation,
man.
unwavering in the original thesis that I connect with you. So I'm thankful to be on the show and I really appreciate you for having me.
Love, man. I appreciate that. Well, I'm Dr. Jabari Evans. This is Justin Hunt. This is Uncommon Knowledge. Signing out. Peace.
Peace.